Good afternoon. My name is Willow Andreasson. Over the past few days I've actually been recording myself narrating from my book A Journey into the Mysteries of Life, A Lessons from the World Beyond, Book 1, The End of the Beginning, which was published in 2013 on Lulu. And today's reading, which I'm hoping I'll be able to fit into the one video, is Chapter 6, which is You Don't Need a TARDIS for Time Travel. Now, I'm hoping, as I say, to be able to fit it all into the one chapter, into the one recording rather. I should be able to, but if there's any abridgments, it's because obviously for timekeeping purposes. So here's Chapter 6. You don't need a TARDIS for time travel. Life continued to move forward. My baby daughter was approaching her first birthday, and her new life was bringing much comfort to a family that had been sorely challenged by death. We had moved into a larger place a short while after my sister's passing and had been living in our new home for only a few weeks. My former partner was the house husband and was sorting out boxes while I was at work. We started planning our daughter's first birthday party around the mid-October time. Tired but happy, we settled down for a night's sleep. I wandered out of my mother's house, wondering what was causing all the commotion out in the street. The traffic was backing up badly, and drivers were becoming agitated. Was our cat sitting in the middle of the road again? I stepped out of the garden. To my surprise, an open-topped coffin was left perched on a stand in the middle of the road. The traffic that had stalled behind it had completely vanished. Who was in the coffin? Knowing I would likely regret finding out, I gingerly peered over its side. The surroundings changed. I didn't know where I was. Looking around me, I seemed to be in an imposing building. It was architecturally religious, with no particular denomination discernible at this stage. A preacher was reading out a sermon to a handful of souls in the congregation, and, as he spoke, the building melted away around me. I looked up from the floor to find myself in my old childhood bedroom. And oh, what a beautiful sight awaited me! My sister was standing before me, shining with health. Her mane of long dark hair had been restored to its former glory, and she was wearing her old black crombie. She looked absolutely fantastic. My eyes filled with tears. We fell into each other's arms and hugged each other tightly for what felt like years. The imposing religious structure surrounded us both this time. The preacher and his quiet congregation had disappeared. My sister wandered over to the pulpit and began to explain about the Book of Life. I thought she may have been referring to the Bible, but she rapidly corrected me. No, the Book of Life. Everyone has a book of their life. Smiling, she beckoned me over to join her at the pulpit. A large stone book was sitting on the stand in front of her. It transpired that the book was made of granite. My sister, a slight person in build and life, picked up this book as if it were as light as a feather. She laid the book down on a table which had mysteriously appeared from nowhere. I realized that I was her pupil, and it was time for my lesson to begin in earnest. The book's pages could be turned with consummate ease. My sister explained that if she needed to know anything about anyone at any given point in their life, all she needed to do was look at their book, and it is there. She showed me the name of the person on the book. The book was in our grandmother's name. The language used for this book was hieroglyphic in appearance, and set in precise, exact columns. When my sister said that the person's life was detailed, she wasn't kidding. The detail is precise to the second. She explained that she was going to demonstrate how the book worked. She pointed to a tiny section of the page she was reading, explaining we were going to travel somewhere. In the blink of an eye, we were standing in what I immediately recognized as Bologna Airport. My sister and I had holidayed in Italy a few years prior to her passing, and had spent a fair bit of time at Bologna Airport. The building works that my sister and I had complained about back then had been completed. The place looked good. I could feel the ground beneath my feet, could feel the bustle and hustle of the crowds pushing past us. The air conditioning in the building still wasn't functional, but I felt no discomfort. The crowd dispersed, and ahead of us stood our brother and our grandmother. I watched horrified as my grandmother's behaviour deteriorated into that of an unruly child. Our brother, a quiet, good-natured man, looked immensely stressed. He was trying to keep control of the situation. I couldn't hear what was being said at first. As soon as I had thought about my struggle to hear their conversation, every single sound became crystal clear. The flight home had been delayed, and our brother was trying to reassure Nana that everything was okay. I felt anguish for him. I so wanted to help him. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. Frustrated, I wondered why he couldn't see us. Why couldn't he hear us? Our sister remained perfectly still, observing as I reached out to him. I was within an inch or so from tapping his shoulder. Suddenly, however, a realization dawned on me. A feeling of utter déjà vu swept over me. This was our brother and grandmother on their way home from their holiday in Italy 4 months ago. Just as I was about to reach our brother, the room darkened. The temperature plummeted significantly, and it quickly became apparent that we weren't in Bologna Airport any longer. We were standing in our grandmother's darkened bedroom, near her chest of drawers. She was standing alone in the darkness. It was the middle of the night, and she was obviously confused. I realized that Nana was oblivious to our presence, so it made no sense to even attempt to reach her. A calendar materialized before my sister and me. I glanced down at it. The date of 9th of December was circled. Our grandfather's name was noted beneath the numeral, along with the fact that he was going to visit Nana that day. The location changed once more to that of an area of our hometown that my sister and I used to visit together. Her previously vivacious demeanour rapidly drained from her. It was now time for some serious talking. I don't like being dead. She looked at me sadly. Concerned, I asked her why, seeking assurances that she wasn't alone. No, she replied. I sought assurance from her that grandfather was with her. Oh, yes, he's with me. Why did she feel so sad? I can't talk to anyone anymore. I found her comment amusing and couldn't even stifle my giggles, vocalizing my thought that something hadn't clicked with her yet. Her expression was quizzical. I assured her that she seemed to be doing a pretty good job right now. Her expression still sullen, she explained that it just wasn't the same for her. She couldn't pick up a telephone any longer. Big Sister comforted her little sister. No, it wasn't going to be the same, but she could talk to me any time she wanted. She confided her true feelings about her death to me. Her reaction was understandable. She was a young soul who had passed just as her life had begun to take off. She was angry and needed to come to terms with her new circumstances. Finally we stared at each other and smiled. The room darkened once more. I was sitting bolt upright in bed. I was confused and had no idea where I was. I glanced over my shoulder to see my former partner slowly sitting up alongside me. My sudden movement had stirred him from his slumbers. Darling, I've just spoken to Sis. The effects of a dream meeting resonated for days after the event. I had no doubt at all that I had met with my sister. I wasn't questioning our meeting at all, but found myself questioning many aspects of it. It was blatantly obvious to me that my sister demonstrated that the book of a person's life could be used as an instrument for time travel. A flippant thought came to mind that you could only use a TARDIS for time travel, but I didn't recollect seeing any scarf-attired curly-locked Time Lord with us. The fact remained unchanged, though. My sister had used Nana's book as an instrument for time travel. She had taken us back to the precise moment she had wanted us to observe. There were crucial differences between our experience and those of the heroic temporal traveller. The Doctor can interact with those he visited both in the past and the future, and the Doctor yields a limited influence over events occurring during his temporal visitations. Whilst my sister and I were very much present at the past event, and I was assuming that the nocturnal visitation to Nana's gloomy bedroom was a reference to a future event, as it later transpired to be, it was apparent that we were invisible to all around us except each other. We had no influence on the events. As much as I wanted to help our brother with our agitated grandmother, I was powerless to do so. My sister had readily accepted this, but then, I reasoned, this was her reality. She was demonstrating to me what it was like to be on the other side. The downside to it, I suppose. Maybe she took me to that particular happening to prove it was her there with them, not grandfather. Maybe I was asking myself the wrong questions. Maybe I was totally missing the true point. I was there that day. My knowledge of temporal mechanics is pretty basic, but even I recognised that all that had occurred that October night flew in the face of many of its laws. How could I have been asleep in a bedroom in Surrey one October night, but also be standing in an airport in broad daylight in another country 4 months before? How could I then literally transfer to another nocturnal location in Surrey to an event that I strongly assumed was going to happen 2 months in the future? Even more crucially, what exactly was the book's true function? How could we time travel the way we did, using only a stone book? Something occurred to me. Perhaps, I thought, we didn't need the man with the curly hair and the long scarf. Maybe I should adjust the situation a little. Perhaps I didn't need the man with the curly hair and the long scarf. There was already a controller of this particular TARDIS that night. She was wearing a black crombie and was completely bereft of any woolly neckwear, although she did have curly hair. And what's more, anyone on their side of the invisible barrier could do exactly the same thing. I confided the contents of the dream to my former partner. He believed me totally and actually wondered why it had taken my sister 5 months to speak, given that it was very hard to silence her in life. I didn't feel so confident about divulging the events of the night with my mother and my brother. The 9th of December date came and went without anything of note occurring, until I received a call from my mother on the 10th. Oh, Nana rang me up earlier. She saw grandfather standing at her bedroom door last night. All I could do was listen as Mum ran through Nana's description of the events of the early hours of that 9th of December morning. Although we knew Nana's memory was frequently playing tricks with her, Mum was 100% certain that Nana was telling the truth. Nana's description was concise and unchanging. It was the middle of the night. Nana was standing alone in her darkened bedroom, unable to sleep. She was crying, missing grandfather. She became aware that someone was standing by her bedroom door. Glancing over, she saw the imposing figure of grandfather. He was leaning against a doorframe, just watching her. She could describe what he was wearing. She noted, however, that his face was in shadow, his features indiscernible. Grandfather moved away from the doorframe, drifting into the hallway. Nana ran after him, pleading with him to stay with her. By the time she reached the door, he had gone.